So let me now wrap up this introductory piece with a 6-point summary of the Theory U framework. Number one, energy follows attention. Whatever we place our attention on, that's where the energy goes. For example, if as a leader I try to prevent something from not happening, that's exactly where the energy will be going. So wherever our energy, wherever our attention is, that's where the energy will go. I pay attention this way, therefore it emerges that way. So the quality of how I pay attention as a conductor, as a listener, is shaping the way the reality, our interaction is unfolding. As we just saw on the clip, the quality of the conductor's listening is shaping the pathway, kind of how this situation, the performance of the whole orchestra is unfolding. Number two, in order to connect to our deeper levels of operating, 5 more points of insights. The first one is that concerns process, that we have to go through a process that deals with these 3 main movements: observe, 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 allow the inner knowing to emerge, and then acting in an instant, prototyping. Number 3, this process, this 3-stage process, only works if we cultivate 3 inner instruments: the open mind, the open heart, and the open will. Number 4, at the core, at the source of this opening process, of this inner cultivation work, is a connection with these 2 root questions of creativity, which are: who is myself and what is my work? And what I mean with who is myself, with a capital S self, is what is my highest future possibility? And what I mean with capital W work is what's my main thing? Kind of what is my purpose? What is my calling that I start to, if I start to connect with it, what's the type of work that if I begin to connect with that, generates more energy than it takes out of me? So that's the second question: what is my work? Number 5, why is this the road less traveled? Many people know this kind of process and they say, yeah, I know creative people that work that way, and I have had moments of that in my own creative work. But that's not how we work in our organization. In our organization, very often we are here on this downloading level, or maybe kind of on the first 2 levels, but not going deeper. So why is this the road less traveled? And I believe it's the road less traveled because the moment you put yourself on a journey, and of course this process that I'm talking about here essentially is a lifelong journey. If you put yourself on that journey, you're going to face 3 enemies which prevent you from accessing your deeper sources of creativity. And the 3 enemies are: number 1, the voice of judgment, which is shutting down the power of your open mind; the voice of cynicism, which is shutting down the power of your open heart; and the voice of fear, which is shutting down the power of the open will. In fact, I traced the Indo-European word root of the English word leadership, which literally means to go forth, to cross a threshold, to go forth from one world to another one. So crossing a threshold, that's really the first meaning of that word root of the English word leadership. And the other meaning is to die. What does it mean to die? To die is to going through this process of letting go of one world in order to, letting go of one world that we are very familiar with in order to let come of another world that we don't even know whether it's really existing, and that we can only find out about if we have the courage to let go of the known and to put our foot into the territory of the unknown. That's really kind of the territory of kind of that third level, kind of the third source of resistance, the voice of fear, and the importance of the source of strengthening our sources of courage in order to deal with the major leadership challenges that we face as individuals, as groups, as organizations, and as larger communities. Lastly, number 6, the 6th point is that this opening process of opening the mind, the heart, the will, when you deal with real change in society today, is not only important for you to do as an individual, as we just saw in the video clip, where the conductor is going through, normal ways of operating, downloading and factual, to, the open arms, kind of empathic listening, and then dropping the baton, the generative listening, but where you need to hold the space to go through the same kind of process also on a collective level. First, as a group, by transforming the type of conversation from downloading and politeness, speaking from what the boss wants to hear, to a debate, right, which is speaking your mind, kind of arguing, but becoming one really with your point of view rather than having a point of view. And number 3, dialogue, leaning into each other, as you can see in this image here, kind of listening and connecting with another person's view. So collective creativity or presencing, which is connecting to the deeper journey that you're on. And we see the same transformation also on an institutional level through the transformation of the geometry of power from the old type of hierarchy, with the source of power being at the top, to a more decentralized organization like functional or geographical or divisional decentralization, to a more networked organization, the 3.0, where the source of power is in your web of relationships rather than the number of people reporting to you, to the flipped pyramid, where something that I call the 4.0 or the ecosystem way of organizing, where we begin to cultivate the relationships by opening the minds, the hearts, and the will to each other and with each other in order to engage in forms of learning and forms of transformation that are functional in areas where hierarchies don't exist or are not useful. And all of that is part of a larger transformation of capitalism that we discussed earlier, from centralized to laissez-faire capitalism to social market economy, to something that maybe we will develop in this century as the co-creative ecosystem economy. The basic point being here, and that's the last point of the summary, that when we look into the world today, what do we see? We see that as a society, we try to solve 4.0 problems and challenges by operating on these earlier levels, 1.0, 2.0, sometimes 3.0. So the lack, what's kind of missing is kind of this deeper space. Kind of the 4.0 economy and the ecosystem way of organizing requires us to do exactly what we saw in the clip, to activate our deeper way of listening, kind of connecting with and operating from source, both as individuals and as a face-to-face community. And that's what kind of, as an action research experiment, we try to explore through the remainder of this lab.